Hello people, been a while since I've released a review, but today I wanted to talk about Sifu, and after completing a Deathless run after many attempts and raging Alt F4s, I realized it's been a while since I felt this way about a game and loved it so much. So I really wanted to talk about it and share it with you guys. So let's just jump right in. Now the first thing I wanted to talk about is combat mastery, and of course combat is going to be the focal point of this game since the theme surrounds martial arts. And when you first see footage of the game or don't know much about it, you might just think it's a kung fu power fantasy where you go around beating the shit out of enemies, and while it can become that, it's not a power fantasy that's handed to you, it's one that you need to earn. This is a game you need to learn and master. And typically when the topic of learning or challenge comes up, people are going to make direct comparisons to games like Dark Souls, and while I don't want to make that comparison, I do want to make a comparison to another FromSoft title, and that title is Sekiro. And not because of mechanics like the game having a posture system or a structure system or whatnot, but because Sifu has the same concept where your defense is actually your offense. If you do not know how to properly parry or avoid attacks, you're gonna have trouble getting through this game efficiently or even at all. And this aspect might scare people away, but I'm telling you, once everything clicks, it feels incredibly rewarding. And while I find the combat can have similarities to Sekiro, I find it actually has a bit more depth, and I'm gonna get into each aspect of combat, the defense and offense. The way defense works in this game is rather interesting, and of course there's a subject of parrying, and it works similar to how Sekiro works, where you time a block as soon as an enemy's attack is about to hit, and doing so will open them up to a counter attack, as well as dealing damage to their posture, or in this game's case, structure, and breaking their structure will open them up to a takedown. Parrying in this game has a lot more flexibility though, because you can actually parry from any angle. And the thing is that this doesn't necessarily make the game easier, it's just a mechanic that had to be put in because you're normally fighting groups of enemies at once. The form of defense that's really interesting to me though is the way you dodge in this game. Now there's two forms of it. There's dashing, but it's not really meant to help you combat enemies, it's just to create spacing just in case you're getting overwhelmed and you need to get away. The real form of dodging is called avoiding, and what I find interesting about it is that there's two distinct inputs for two distinct attack types. So for example, if you hold on to block and move up, you will actually dodge a low attack, and if you hold on to block and move down, you will dodge a high attack. And it's a bit strange at first, but once it clicks, it feels really satisfying. And the thing about dodging an enemy's strong attack is that it doesn't just make you avoid damage, it opens them up to a counter attack as well. And this has a very significant chance of stunning them, which can allow you to retaliate with an even greater offense. And speaking of offense, I really like the way the game handles this as well. Now, technically you can go through the game just pressing a random combination of light and heavy attacks, but the game actually has some pretty intricate combos that don't just do varying amounts of damage, but also put enemies in specific states. And the usual states you're putting an enemy in are a stun state, a push state, or a knockdown state. There's a variety of ways to put enemies in this position, and they also synergize really well with the abilities you can learn throughout the game. Now, there are passive abilities that you can learn throughout the game that give you stuff like extra health on takedowns or more damage to structure when you parry. But I'd say the real star of the show are the active abilities you can learn. And what I like about these abilities is that they don't act as something that's stupid OP. They have a variety of uses, whether they're common or very specific. For example, a move I use all the time is the snap kick, and not because it deals a bunch of damage, but because it has a really good gap closer. I can take down an enemy and then move on to the next in almost an instant. This keeps the flow of the fight quick and seamless. Or another ability I use is the crotch punch, because it's a defensive and offensive maneuver in one. It doesn't only avoid high attacks, but it can also stun an enemy in the middle of their own attack, and this can be especially useful against certain enemy types. And the thing is that there's even more moves that synergize with the combos you can pull off. For example, you can do a push kick combo and then follow up with a chasing trip kick. The point I'm trying to make with saying all this is that the game just has a good layer of complexity, but it doesn't feel overwhelming at the same time, which is something I really like about it. And outside of just general mechanics, the game just feels really good to play. The animations are so smooth, and there's a lot of subtle clarity in its movements, so it can be really easy to actually read an enemy's attack and understand where you fucked up and how you can follow up. On top of that, the takedowns are just fun to pull off and watch, and what I appreciate about them is that they're really quick. They don't seem to waste your time. And something I really like about them is that they interact with the environment dynamically. So if you're near a wall or an object, the takedown is going to interact with said object. It's just so cool. Now, as much as I love the combat, are there issues with it? Yes, there is, but it's just a single issue, and it's the game's fucking camera. Now, it's something that eases up the more you play, but when you're new to the game, everything feels foreign and you're trying to learn enemy attack patterns, it can be really frustrating when the camera's zooming in on your ass crack and you can't see what the fuck is going on. But soon enough, you get to a point where you get so good at dodging and parrying enemy attacks just by seeing like a single animation, everything becomes sort of this natural instinct, and you begin to realize that you shouldn't be putting yourself in a position where you're cornered against a wall. Anyways, outside of anything to do with the camera, the combat itself just feels really good, and with everything said about the combat, you may think it's the only challenge of the game, but no, the real challenge is how death functions. Now, I'm sure a lot of you heard about the aging mechanic, where you die, you get older, and the thing about your age is that it's recorded between levels, so if you finish level 2 at age 40, for example, you will be age 40 for the next level. And the thing about dying in this game is that if you keep dying repeatedly, it adds a number to your death counter. So instead of just aging once after a death, you can age like 5 times instead. And if you go past age 75, that's it, you're dead completely and you have to restart the level. Now, there is some flexibility when it comes to death in this game though. For example, if you beat a strong enemy or a boss, you can lower your death counter so you won't age as quickly on your next death. On top of that, there's also other things to make your life a little easier. For example, when you die, you actually deal more damage, but you just get less health. But you also get the chance to buy new abilities if you have enough XP. It's a bit of a trade-off, and you see, that's the key word here, trade-off. For example, when you start a level at age 40 and you keep dying in it, you can actually restart the level and be back at age 40. Another thing that's pretty lenient is that you keep key items. So for example, let's say you went through the whole level and you got a key to open a specific door that you couldn't get through before, well, you can keep that item when you restart the level. So now you can actually open yourself a shortcut, making the level a little bit easier, letting you get through it quicker. But you see, here's the trade-off. If you restart a level, you will actually lose the abilities you didn't permanently unlock, as well as the rewards you did or didn't get within that level. And you see, this brings me back to what I said before. This is a game you have to learn and master, which also brings me to how content works in this game. You see, this isn't a game that can be measured by how long it takes to finish it. Because honestly, you can probably finish the game within an hour if you play really well. But you see, that's the thing. The amount of hours you take to beat this game is gonna differ because you might not be as skilled at it as other people are. So even though there are 5 levels and you can probably beat each of them within maybe 15 or 30 minutes, maybe even less, there's a chance you won't be able to do that because you might not be as great at the game as other people. But anyways, let's say you do finish the game rather quickly. Is there more content? Well, you see, the content stems from your own internal reward system. Do you have the drive to get better and keep one-upping your last run? Maybe you finish the game in the regular manner, but maybe now you can go for the true ending. Or maybe instead of just getting the true ending, maybe you want to get all the collectibles throughout the levels. Or maybe you want to try a deathless run. Maybe you want to do a speed run. Maybe you want to do a true ending deathless run all from scratch without shortcuts, which I finally completed a couple of days ago and it felt really good. But you see, that's the way I function. That's the stuff that makes me feel rewarded and satisfied. So if you're not someone that really likes to spend their time with a game, repeating stuff so you get better and better to the point where you're like a master at it, this game might not be for you. But if you're someone that really likes to challenge yourself, then this will be right up your alley. Now, speaking of challenge, there is a topic I want to talk about and it has to do with this game. I want to talk about difficulty and accessibility. So apparently Slow Clap, the developers of this game, are looking to add difficulty modes to it, whether they're harder or easier. But the thought of adding an easy mode to this game makes me feel a little skeptical. And when this subject comes up, it usually causes an uproar. There's one side of people saying it just makes it accessible for everyone. What's the issue? Stop gatekeeping. And then there's people that say nothing more than get good. Now, when it comes to me or people like me, we like a game with a good challenge. You know, I'm loving Sifu. I loved Sekiro. Hollow Knight's also one of my favorite games. I like a game with a good challenge. But with that being said, I don't necessarily have an issue with a game having some accessibility. But I do have a view that it may not work for certain games, and I think Sifu is one of them. So for one, I'm not really a fan of difficulty modes to begin with, because they usually turn into a balancing nightmare, where it's like at harder difficulties, enemies are tankier and you're squishier, but at lower difficulties, it's the opposite. A game that did a good job with difficulty in my opinion was Doom Eternal. For example, at Ultra Violence, you do take more damage, but what it mainly does is that enemies become a lot more aggressive and are more prone to using powerful attacks. So that means your reflexes have to be more on point and you have to make better use of your arsenal to stay on top. I think that's a great way of dealing with difficulty. So when it comes to Sifu, I don't know how they're gonna handle the difficulty settings. Maybe they'll do a good job, but I think adding an easy mode might defeat the point of the game, at least in my head. Because while I can understand the perspective of somebody saying what's wrong with making a game accessible for everyone, it creates an issue because when a game tries to be for everyone, it can get messy, it can lose focus, and also lose a part of its identity. And the thing about Sifu is that the concept surrounds martial arts, and martial arts is something you have to hone over a long period of time. And while Sifu might not take you years to master like an actual martial art, it still takes time to learn and master. The point is about conquering your failures and getting better, becoming a better fighter, or in this case, a better player. And you see, this is the same concept that exists in games like Dark Souls, Bloodborne, Sekiro, and so on. It's about overcoming great odds, adapting and improving. And I think if you give people an easy mode, you might strip them of the satisfaction of actually improving and realizing that, oh, I've actually gotten better. That's the thing I'm worried about. At the end of the day though, this is Slowclap's decision and they are the developer. They can do what they please with their own property. And I understand from maybe a business standpoint that it'll make it accessible to more people, thus more people might play the game. Although, it just worries me that it might affect the game's identity, and not in a good way. Anyhow, what are your guys' thoughts on this? Do you think the game looks cool? Is it something you would play? Or maybe you already have played it? If so, what do you think of it? And what are your thoughts on the whole debate about difficulty and accessibility? I'd really like to hear what you think. Anyhow, thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed. Peace.